Okay, now, I feel like that, judging by the title down below, it probably gives you a clear-sighted context of what is about to happen. Because having just gotten out of the theater, as well as gotten a hold of some essentials needed for my dietary week, I am humbly proud to present my official review of Transformers 1. Yep. This, in fact, is a piece that a good majority of Transformers fans, both old and new, have been looking forward to seeing. After all the many years of different pieces that we've gotten between live action and animated variations of Transformers movies, shows, and whatnot, this is definitely one piece that really ties a lot of things together. It truly brings about the origin of Orion Pax and Megatronus coming together in a fight against the corrupt elite. But in this case, it actually does things a bit differently, yet still give us a unique presentation. Something that we never truly thought would happen. But dare I say, that with a movie like this, having such big actors in there, like Chris Hemsworth, Keegan-Michael Key, and many others, it really is such a unique piece of art that was certainly done well by the many production companies that came together, including Paramount. Said company was also responsible for all those crappy Michael Bay films. Yeah. But I really do have to mention that, apart from the cast, including such known names from over the past decade or so, not just Chris Hemsworth, Steve Buscemi, Keegan-Michael Key, Brian Tyree Henry, Scarlett Johansson, John Hamm, John Bailey, Lawrence Fishburne, Evan Michael Lee, and many others out there. But I also have to mention that the director's podium was done none other by Josh Cooley. Yep. You heard that right. This is the same man who had also given us the likes of Toy Story 4 after the many years of John Lasseter holding the director's podium for the Toy Story franchise. So you could say Josh Cooley has had some big experiences in the film industry. Toy Story, and not to mention other franchises that I have also yet to mention, were also thanks to his own expertise. There was also other Pixar films and short films that he participated in, like Toy Story of Terror, as well as Up. Yeah, this was a while before a lot of that stuff happened. But now comes Transformers 1. One of the only other things that he's done other than Pixar. And considering that this was Paramount, a whole different world of filmmaking, Cooley was definitely a man with lots of experiences in his hand. And trying his hand with a different company seemed like it was going to be a challenge considering how many years he's had with Pixar and Disney. But dare I say, he did a fine job with this one. Like, I probably wouldn't have had it any other way. If it were him and Michael Bay, the former would be an obvious choice. Because with a lot of people wanting to take craps on Toy Story 4, yet failing to see the true potential that Toy Story 4 had brought us, with its unique sense of style, incredible world building, and a nice big way to show us once and for all that even if two main characters were separated from one another, their friendship goes to infinity and beyond, much like the ending of the film itself. 5 years later, though, we have something wholly different. Way out of the park we got with this one. Because this does in fact tell us the origin story of Transformers itself. The story of Orion Pax and how he rose to fame as the one and only Optimus Prime, current wielder of the Matrix of Leadership, as bestowed to him as a gift of honor by the one and only Primus, the godlike planet who came to be known as Cybertron, the current homeworld of the Transformers race, and was also responsible for the birthing of the first Transformers race members themselves, known as the Primes, including Alchemist Prime, Megatronus Prime, and as always, Historian Alpha Trion. That was a long told story that has been passed down generation after generation after generation, but with the most recent leader, Sentinel Prime, he basically is the new leader of the city of Iacon. A certain bot happens to be sneaking around, as we see in the opening scene, especially when all those credits take place and all those production companies come around, including Paramount and a newly formed Hasbro Entertainment title card. But after a lot of different things have come around, we basically see one bot infiltrate a certain hallway, which is led with patrol guards and bots that are scanning the environment for any trespassers. This bot is basically looking through archive logs, hoping to find more about the history of the Matrix of Leadership in order to, in fact, become a certain savior of Iacon. You see, he intends to bring the Matrix itself to Sentinel in the hopes that he gets higher ups, because he's apparently one of those whom is tired of living the common lifestyle. Much like myself, if you can't do anything by word, you might as well take action in the hopes that something should happen. And boy, did that exact thing happen. Because Orion does get a bit of a chase scene going on, where he jumps out of a window and eventually finds himself in a cart of another bot. This bot is known by the name of D16. Yeah, this is something we never heard of before, but actually came around to be Orion Pax's best friend, as they both board a train bound for their current line of work, because they're apparently known as minor bots. Minor bots on Cybertron apparently are not able to transform, unlike a majority of other members of the Transformers race. But this does play a pretty critical role, which eventually becomes revealed later on in the plot. Until then, though, we're revealed Orion Pax and D16's current line of work, which is, of course, mining for Energon. Because apparently what had happened is that after the battle between the Primes and the Quintessons, which were at first known to be the creators of the Transformers race, but according to this film, they are sworn enemies of the Transformers race. And while it is technically true, they are indeed enemies of the Transformers race, even G1 could go so far to tell you that the Quintessons were necessary in the hopes of bringing the Transformers race back to full circle. Yeah, Transformers G1 Season 3. You remember that one, right? Where everybody becomes infected with some sort of red stuff? Yeah, a Quintesson was necessary in order to bring the Transformers race and the rest of the universe to full balance. Anyways, in this case though, Sentinel Prime does in fact become the leader of the Transformers race, as its current status is implied, and with the usage of mining for Energon, they do hope to have the planet restored to its normal balance. Because without Energon production, a majority of technology and the Transformers themselves cannot function anymore. But the thing is that after some hard work is put together, and after a supposed failed quest to retrieve the Matrix of Leadership, Sentinel does in fact grant access to every member of the Transformers race that's currently around a whole day off of work. The Iacon 5000 is a race where all the best of the Transformers come together to race for a victory. And what exactly is the main prize? Well, it's not exactly disclosed. It's more or less just some sort of competition that they put up just for fun to take a nice little break from work. And the thing is, after the crap that Orion Pax, D16, as well as their commander-in-chief known as Elita come together, as well as a bit of a jerk in the mines named Darkwing, a lot of brush-ups happen between them. Orion discusses his plans for the future, and D16 hopes to continue his role as a miner, while Elita basically is rather annoyed about Orion's different opportunities, including his failure to heed the protocol in the attempt to rescue a fellow bot named Jazz. Yep, we're right out of the blue associating ourselves with a known Autobot. But let's remember, this is an origin story about how Autobots and Decepticons first came to be. So, like I said, there are some critical moments in the plot that soon come to be revealed later on in this film. Anyways, the Icon 5000 takes place. Orion and DB16 first get their hands on some nice seats where they're able to see a great amount of the race take place, but unknowingly, trapdoors open below them, and they're dropped right into the race. Orion and DB are thankfully equipped with jetpacks in the hopes to keep up with the rest of the racers, whom are all in transformed states. And when everybody eventually looks to see that there are 2 minors in the race, it really gets a lot of people excited, in the hopes that the lower ranking Transformers, including all of the minors and even Elita herself, all become impressed enough in the hopes that Sentinel might actually give the minors a chance at some higher-ups, including in his own commodities and his own accommodations. Which, thankfully, even though DB and Orion don't make it to the finish line, they actually are still impressive enough to really turn Sentinel's eyes in their direction. In fact, he announces that he loved their performance so well that he wants to escort them to his own throne to accommodate them with anything he could possibly offer. The best care, the best cuisine, the best anything, basically. It's that kind of special tradition where, basically in like the medieval era, if you happen to do well in a competition, no matter how horrible of a person you might seem, you could actually get a lot of special privileges and a lot of special respects from the king himself. In this movie, we have a similar principle taking place. However, in spite of this promise that was given to them, they're instead intercepted by Darkwing, whom, believe it or not, gets so fed up with them and their many attempts to undermine him that he actually sends them straight down to a location known as Sub-Level 50. They come across a certain bot, whom is apparently all crazed up, because he had been cooped up down there for so long. Yeah, it's that unique psychological profile where if somebody happens to be cooped up in a certain space without company for too long, they end up becoming insanely deranged, mentally speaking. And this mostly is supported by the fact that they have accomplices, supposed friends, that apparently are not alive but are in fact constructed from various parts that they could find. In this case, this bot goes by the name of D, or B in this case. We have a D16, and now we have a bot known by the name of B27. So that's just sort of weird. I mean, Orion Pax, D16, B27? What was Orion's original name? Who really knows? But any which way you look at it, they accidentally discover a certain transmission was made. A transmission that was made by none other than the Primes themselves, including Alpha Trion. Apparently, there's a map hidden inside. A distress signal that was sent out with some special coordinates on their current location. The thing is, that tracker was actually able to pinpoint the exact location on where it currently was, and with the last coordinates being released, this apparently is like a map. A map that can not only guarantee the bots' ability to find the actual matrix of leadership, but also try again to get to Sentinel Prime. Despite being stuck at sub-level 50, B27 has a plan. They have to go up 50 levels through that same trash chute that he was situated with. Yeah, we have ourselves an epic quest. One that does start off with some not so bright moments, including yet another encounter with Elita, whom was already very angered by what had happened. Her brushes with Orion Pax, DB16, and other members of the Mind, and even Darkwing, had gotten her demoted to a pretty bad level, where she's now basically loading trains full of trash. Yeah, and once she completes her certain duties, she eventually discovers the 3 bots that are inside, tries to sound off security, but ends up getting locked inside the train as it departs from the station on its way to the surface of Cybertron, a place that is seen as extremely dangerous and lethal. But the bots still risk their lives in order to see what is up there. And when they get on top of the train, pursuit of Alita herself, as she does continue to try to get the train to turn back around so she can report this matter of inconvenience to any higher-ups, they do reach the surface as planned. And when it does happen, the sight is insane. The view of the nearby sun does give a lot of certain cyber synthwave vibes to it. Who would have thought we could actually get a sense of style that really brings us back to a certain point in history when Transformers were at their prime. No pun intended. Any which way you look at it though, despite the luster that's in the distance, trouble is still brewing, because just as DB had said before, the surface is in fact a dangerous place to be in. The train gets derailed, all 4 bots get thrown off the train as it departs even further and goes out of sight. They can't reach it. They now have no way of getting to the Matrix of Leadership quickly. They now have to have full reliance on the map itself that the beacon showcased, along with the SOS message that they discovered in the bot known as Steve, which was one of B's friends, until Orion accidentally kills him. Of course, Alita decides to take control of navigation while B does a lot of talking every which way. I guess you could say he was the real annoying person in the group. Possibly so because he had a huge lack of social life due to him being cooped up in that room at Sub-Level 50 for so long. You know, one can only imagine. How much worse could it get? Well then, for the most part, everything seemed like it was going to go alright. Even Cybertronian deers were on the surface as well. However, their purple lights would all turn red, showcasing that there was danger in the area. And surely, it came from the sky this time, rather than from the mountains that were crumbling up behind the train. The Quintessons were actually up on the surface, scanning for any living life forms. And what were they going to do with them exactly? Even they didn't know at the time what was going to happen, but they sure did know to avoid the spotlights, which they barely managed to do so. And when the ship leaves, they do continue as normal, eventually coming across a certain cave. A cave full of stalactites, making it look kind of like those giant worm things from the Dune films. So of course, when they enter it, they happen to come across, believe it or not, the remains of all of the primes that were inside. And when they happen to find what's left of Alpha Trion, they actually go in to revive him, as his spark was still left inside, somehow intact and somehow still active. And by giving him a small amount of energon, they actually restore him to operational condition. But he is barely able to keep a hold of himself, to keep himself together as he lumbers around the area, hoping to get a notion of what was going on, thinking that the war was still going on, and somehow there was more to this than meets the eye. Because Alpha Trion not only showcases what had happened to him and the rest of the primes, he also reveals some devastating information. Shockingly, as it turns out, Sentinel Prime was actually the one responsible for calling in a bunch of enemy soldiers. And these enemy soldiers in particular were actually the ones that killed the primes themselves. Sentinel himself put up this entire fight against the primes, bringing the original waves of the Transformers race down after supposedly this whole thing was set up as some sort of sensitive info relayed as an informant plan. But you could say that Sentinel Prime was officially his own double agent, working for himself, pretending to be on the side of the primes, when really he was hoping to seek out leadership for himself and usurp all the higher-ups that were well above his own ranking. He not only successfully defeats all the primes, but even claims a spark for himself. And what's even worse is that Sentinel definitely caused a lot of trouble in Iacon, and nobody had any clue of what was really going on. Because not only was Sentinel basically a lie the entire time, claiming to have the Matrix of Leadership through his discoveries on his trips to the surface, but it turns out that when they go outside the cave to show what was really going on, as the Quintesson ships land and a nearby train full of trash, quothetically speaking, arrives in the view, Sentinel Prime and some of his finest troops from Iacon have apparently made their way to said location where the ship was landed. The leader of the Quintesson steps out of that exact ship, and the ship itself extracts all the trash from the train itself. And it's revealed to all be pure Energon. The same Energon that all the bots in Iacon have been mining for this entire time. And what's even worse is that the Quintessons get very irritated about this because it's not enough to make them satisfied. Sentinel promises to get them more and triples the shifts so that all bots on Iacon that are currently mining will have way more work to do and pretty much be made to work like literal slaves for a while. And so after all this info is granted to them, Alpha Trion really did give us a nice big truth to work with. All four of the bots, especially D16, are beyond devastated, mortified at what had happened, or what will happen, now that Sentinel has way more work to do for the Quintessons in order to pay off his debt to them. He basically is going to force every bot to work until they grind to a halt. And when that happens, the unthinkable could possibly get even worse from there. The bots organize a plan to get proof to Iacon that Sentinel has been living a lie along with the rest of his own race for 50 straight cycles. But how did they do that? Alpha Trion does show them a way out by going through some tunnels that lead to a set of mountains, which will help them get straight back to Iacon, and even helps equip them with a special chip that contains all the secrets that he had revealed to them in that little story that he gave off to them in the form of a bit of a dust storm. It was a unique tale that he told them, which was to be used as evidence to bring down Sentinel Prime and usurp his so-called leadership, so he can never do any more of these actions against the Transformers race again. However, they are not alone in this case. Shortly after the bots make it out of the cave, Alpha Trion is discovered by Sentinel's forces, including Arachnid, and basically taken back to Iacon for questioning. The bots do their best to make their way out of there, including the ability to learn how to transform, as Alpha Trion did grant them some new cogs for transformation purposes. This changes their looks significantly, and even more so, gives them the power to transform into various vehicle forms. Optimus goes out like a truck, Bumblebee goes out like a car, Arcelita basically goes in as a motorcycle, and then you have D16 going in as a tank. Yeah, and I might as well mention that while Bumblebee wasn't really the name given to B-27, he in fact was having a bit of trouble trying to come up with a good nickname for himself, even calling himself a certain other name, which I certainly won't be saying. But leave it to the bots themselves to start making their own decisions from here on out. They're a group of 4 destined to bring down Sentinel once and for all. Before they can, though, they're ambushed by a certain group known as the High Guard. And the High Guard has been known for some time, even by Orion Pax himself, after a lot of research was made. The leader of the group, known as Starscream, does intend on stopping Sentinel once and for all after some years of isolation and hiding in the shadows. But because of these 4 bots, there supposedly is even more of a reason to bring down Sentinel, since they themselves agree on the same thing. And they also have proof on what Sentinel has done. So they do in fact create a pact to work together and bring down Sentinel and all of his higher-ups and his bots, once and for all, to save Iacon from even further tyranny. Before any of that can ever happen though, D16 does in fact start to get even worse. He's not only angered about the situation with Sentinel, but it starts to corrupt him to a certain point. And unfortunately for us, it could only grow even worse. Because supposedly, even after he's done beating Sentinel, he will no longer stand to any possible leadership. He will start following his own path from here on out. Sentinel, of course, does intercept the likes of all 4 of the bots, plus all of the High Guard, and brings in over half of the entire armada on both ends. D16 and B are taken into custody along with a good majority of the High Guard, including Starscream himself, while Orion Pax, Elita, Shockwave, Soundwave, and the rest of the High Guard members are all left to fight in their own way. Orion goes in to bring in reinforcements straight from the mines themselves, while Elita starts to lead the charge in the fight against Sentinel. Whereas D16 gets a certain engraving put into his chest. After all, Megatronus Prime was seen as an idol to him, and he now has a permanent marking on his chest, of which it would come to be known as the Decepticon insignia. But that of course wouldn't happen until sometime later, as the rest of the bots would eventually be given that same exact marking. But in any case though, until any of that happens, the fight against Sentinel takes place. It's a vicious battle that even ends with Arachnid having her memory broadcast the exact memory of Sentinel Prime and all this trouble that he had caused for the bots on Iacon and elsewhere. It eventually grows down to a grueling duel that eventually leads to D16 being the true bot to take him down. Because even though the truth had been revealed, he was still unsatisfied. He really wanted to end Sentinel once and for all by actually shooting at him with his newly acquired fusion cannon. Yeah, it turns out that those cogs that Alpha Trion gave to the 4 were more than just necessary for transformation. It also gave them the power to fight like true warriors. Battle masks, blades, guns, a lot of stuff. Even Energon-based weapons. But of course, the true ending of all this would come around when Orion Pax stands in front of D16 as he's prepared to fire at Sentinel and kill him. He accidentally, severely injures his own friend, Orion Pax, barely saving his life as he's holding him over the edge of a large hole. But the final stages of Z16's own corruption settles into play as he lets go. His eyes turn bright red, and the true nature of D16 comes to be known by the name of Megatron, after Megatronus Prime himself and the newly acquired purple core, which came to be known as Dark Energon. As for Orion Pax, he falls helplessly through that hole all the way to the core of the planet itself. Cybertron's own creator, Primus, was waiting for him. And through it all, we are shown an impressive display. Megatron's newly acquired form allows him to rise to power and claim victory over the defeat of Sentinel Prime, and a new age of the Transformers race, where they will no longer bow to any Prime that is seen. They will instead march in their own direction, and the name of the team will come to be known as the Decepticons. But until that happens, they plan on eradicating every possible follower of Sentinel Prime and the other Primes that would also emerge through history. Whereas Orion Pax and Primus meet And as Orion is brought back to life, the matrix of leadership emerges from within, goes into his own spark, and allows the two powers to come together to create the one and only Optimus Prime. As he shoots above like a cannon straight back up to Iacon, he ambushes the new leader known as Megatron. It sets off on an impressive display of power. A struggle between two big bots that is really a true battle that is more than worth all the money you can put in. And granted, having gone into the theater with some smoked trout, some death by chocolate, and some pumpkin seeds, I tell you, it was a feast for the eyes, ears, as well as for the mouth and stomach. So, I could tell you for one thing, this was definitely a movie that I had no regret seeing. In comparison to another September 2024 film known as Beetlejuice, I gave that one the ultimate rating of 10.1. Right up there with the bad guys. Now, I will say with Transformers 1, coming to a big ending right then and there, with Optimus Prime emerging as the last Prime to ever walk on Cybertron and lead the charge in the fight of justice, freedom, and equity amongst all members of the Transformers race, whereas Megatron and all remaining members of the High Guard and beyond that have gone to serve him as the new high power of Cybertron have all become banished from Iacon. I can truly tell you, with such a big ending like that, that would come to be known as the beginning of the Transformers Civil War on Cybertron that would last for a good 9 million years. It's a bit hard to tell how amazing this film could possibly be. With all the insanely big things that have been coming together, the animation style they chose for this, which does give me a combination of feelings that I've gotten from Transformers Prime, which had come out more than a decade ago. And of course, we definitely can't forget about all the events on Cybertron, especially when you take into consideration of the Transformers Cybertron video games. War for Cybertron, Fall of Cybertron, and Rise of the Darkspark, which also gave us the Michael Bay stuff that was going on at the time as well. You had two different Transformers games franchises going together by the year 2014 with Rise of the Darkspark, which is seen as a rare thing nowadays. You can't even get a hold of it on PlayStation Store, and with every copy that's ever been sold on all consoles, it's hard to come by. Even the copy that I bought on PS4 cost almost $80 for a new one. But in any case though, in regards to Transformers 1, being that I get similar vibes from those two other continuities that I've mentioned, as well as a number of other things out there, including some known references from the Bayverse films, the fact that Sentinel Prime is seen as a traitor amongst all good that the bots have gotten from over the years, and the fact that we now have ourselves an official movie citing the origin story of the events of Cybertron and the Civil War that would last for a good 9 million years, but for the Transformers race, including all members of both factions of Autobots and Decepticons, would retreat from Cybertron in the hopes to find new energy and continue their life, which of course would come to be known as the 4 million year slumber after they crash land on Earth. But of course, with all other things that would come around, Josh Cooley's director job, an impressive cast, including a pre-recorded piece of media with the likes of Chris Hemsworth, Keegan-Michael Key, and Brian Tyree Henry, all out there, thanking us for watching the movie, which of course started at the beginning of the film, not at the end, I could certainly give this a nice big ranking, right then and there, with all the unique vibes that it gives us of G1, just as well as it does with a lot of modern media in Transformers history, with all the pink lasers and all the unique sparks and tire tread marks and all the unique space and cyberpunk stuff that we can probably get out of something like this. It's no wonder why I'm more than just willing to go almost as high as Beetlejuice. So with that in mind, 9.7 out of 10.1. This certainly is one of the best Transformers media of all time. And I'm not joking. After all the stuff that we had gotten, after all the amazing stuff we have gotten, G1, Beast Wars, Armada, Robots in Disguise, Prime, Animated, Cybertron, etc. This beats a lot of those by miles. And here in the year 2024, which is yet another 40th anniversary package deal, it's even more significant. I mean, it's just like what we had gotten with the new Godzilla vs. Kong sequel, the new Ghostbusters sequel, and a lot of other things. It's no real secret that the year 2024 is an anniversary deal for a lot of franchises. And this year alone has been a huge year for new films. So, it might be a bad year in some certain ways. But we can at least agree on the fact that with pop culture, it comes around to help save the day. Or at least what the year had given us in a not so great way. And Transformers 1 is a definite deal breaker. Coming in on the 40th anniversary of Transformers and coming in with a whole new line of actors to take on the roles that were previously used for many years by the likes of Peter Cullen, Frank Welker, and many more. So I'm certain that if the likes of Hemsworth and Henry do stick around, at least with this particular continuity, I'm sure that if Transformers 1 would end up getting a sequel in the future, I'm totally on board with it. If they can tell us anything that happened during the 9 million year long Civil War that transpired in the Transformers history books, well, I'd be more than willing to pay top dollar for it. Or, if I happen to have any of my free passes that I've gotten thanks to a good little deal I got from a little raffle that I had participated in last month, well, like I said, I'm totally in on it. Transformers 2 would certainly be a nice way to continue things from where we left off. After the banishing of all High Commanders and Megatron himself from Icon, who knows what could happen next. Anyways though, this was a big film that I had just seen, and I'm beyond happy that I got the chance to see it. With a free pass and a nice good meal, I might have had one of the best experiences in theaters yet. And apart from Beetlejuice being the next greatest film that we've ever seen in history, Transformers 1 did come pretty close, but still didn't quite hit the marks as we would have suspected. And it had to be from one thing: B-27's supposed nickname. Yeah. So from that, I will say, thank you very much for watching this piece. And thanks again to sticking around, because through the rest of this coming week, starting on the 22nd, we are going to be having an epic marathon. Because we have another big film that's coming around very soon. So I'll see you guys tomorrow, and I hope you're ready, because we will be whirlwinding our way through another big week worth of work in many different ways.
Whatever I want, I usually get, and I'm thinking I want you, but I don't have you yet. I ain't got no tricks to be playing on you.